What's up, people? It's your host of the Unleashed podcast, Jake here. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everyone that is watching all our episodes, liking and subscribing. We really appreciate it. If you are new to the show, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button or a like and check out all our episodes. It's been an absolute joy. This episode we're showing today is with an AFL legend, Jeff White, who has actually been on a crazy journey post his career, going through some challenges and tribulations, but he's come out the other side and he speaks really vulnerably about his mental health in his own podcast, and you'll find in this episode there's so many nuggets there to help you in your life. So I can't wait to share it with you. So let's get into the episode.
The ball straight run up. Now he angles it somewhat. Barkadash.
Where I started, it's been up and down.
I remember being a kid.
I can see that happening.
That's something, there's always something to do.
The Unlaced
podcast. It's actually not bad.
And we're live. We're back on the dance floor, everyone. The Unlaced podcast. It's been a hell of a year, 2022. Before we get into today's show and guest, as I always do, I just want to thank everyone that's been tuning in, subscribing, and listening to all the episodes. I put out a story today just, announcing we want to get more business people on, more creative people. If any of you guys have any suggestions on who you'd like to hear on the show, please let me know. We'll try to get them on and do our best. But today's a really exciting episode because I actually knew of this man when he was an AFL footballer and always admired him because he was always the tallest bloke on the field, but definitely came to connection with him or reconnected with him via his social media and I guess kind of seeing what he was putting out in the atmosphere, which was a whole bunch of positivity, a whole bunch of wellness and perspective on life, which I found really interesting and quite insightful. And then funnily enough, the man created his own podcast on this, which I've been listening to. So really excited to announce Melbourne Demon legend, ex-AFL legend, Jeff White. Thank you for giving us your time, mate.
No worries, Jake. Thanks for having me. Thanks. Good time too with the Demons winning last night. So
I know,
really
right?
Well.
Mate, it must have been pretty surreal for you kind of watching the last 10 years and then sort of the last 2-3 years and obviously now going forward, they're kind of like the team to beat.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting when you go back a couple of years ago and I followed as a fan now with my kids and in and unders, and on paper they look good, but it's just about connection, I guess, and keeping healthy and having those players on the field, and they need to really improve their foot skills, and they did that. They corrected it, and obviously the result speak for itself last year. And yeah, they're playing great footy. They've got a good nucleus of players, but I always say that you've got to keep healthy to get to the, to actually win the premiership, and that's what they did last year. So they just got to maintain that healthiness this year.
Definitely. Did you see it coming? Because like a lot of people kind of with the drafts, they had Olivers, Petrakas, all these guys, and then you had kind of Gawn coming through and maturing. Did you kind of foresee it coming, or did you still think it was a lot of work to do? They had to get the right person in, build the right culture and stuff?
No, I think definitely on paper they had the side. I mean, when you look at a spine, you always go with the spine. What I mean by that is full back through to full forward in your midfield, and if you go through each of those positions on the field, it stacks up. I mean, majority of those players made the All-Australian last year and the year before as well. So they had the nucleus there to do it, and they just had to put it together. But like I said, you needed to stay healthy, and when you have that. When you're predictable for one another and everyone's playing together, it makes it so much easier. You can, if you have a couple of players go down, it's, you're introducing new players. You don't know how they play. It's such an instinctive game. So you've got to stay healthy.
Definitely. Can you give us, I'm sure there's some Melbourne fans listening in, can you give us a bit of insight into what Jeff White's household was like after that big win against the Bulldogs in Perth in the granny?
Well, I was actually at the golf club, and it was pretty entertaining in the first quarter. Very quiet for the second. Very quiet for the first half of the third quarter, and then it erupted I think it was such a special moment. I played for St Kilda as a kid, so I never got to witness a premiership.
Me too.
Yeah, and then played for Fremantle in Melbourne, had the opportunity to play in the grand final of 2000 and we missed out. So I never really experienced that, even as a kid, and as an adult and as playing as a professional athlete, never got the experience that. So to sit there with my three boys and witness something that we haven't done in 57 years was truly very special and something I'll never forget.
Absolutely. Now, are all your boys actually Melbourne fans, I assume? They none of them sort of...
Yeah, they are.
Okay, well, that's handy then.
Yeah, even though we live on the even though we live on the Gold Coast, they've been red and blue for since I was born, pretty much.
Okay. Well, a lot of people don't know this about you, probably pre-AFL, but you're actually quite big on your basketball, and I think that was one of your sort of more interested sports growing up as a kid. Like, what sort of grew your love for that? And do you watch basketball now? Are you still into it as much as you were back then?
Yeah, massive Chicago Bulls fan and have been. My dad went to, I don't know, I just picked up basketball when I was a kid. I think with my athleticism and I could jump. I mean, I was dunking when I was in year 9. So
wow.
I know. So I had that athleticism from a young age. So I think, I was playing state basketball, Bayside Blues at the time. I think they're still called that, but Bayside Blues when I was like 9 years of age, 10 years of age, and footy was almost like a hobby. But then my dad went over to Chicago at the time he was working for Pepsi, and 87 had a conference. There's no social media back then. You rarely get any activity or any news from the States. He came back with the Bulls 23 and said, look, this guy's going to be massive. It's all over Chicago. It's all over the billboards. You should follow him. And yeah, that was it. That was the hook, line and sinker for me. So started following it very passionately, but when I got to the age of 15, when school became very serious, basketball was 3-4 times a night. Training was 3-4 times a week. Footy was starting to get that way. I needed to make a decision, and it was that's what I needed to do. And finished up playing, I guess, state basketball when I was 16, just to solely focus on footy.
Well, you probably, I'm not going to say you made the right call, because God knows what you would have been in basketball, but you went pick number 1 in 1994, the AFL draft, which is the most prestigious position to get drafted in, of course. But I want to go back to that moment for you, because one, how big was that? And obviously Fremantle at the time were a brand new franchise essentially into the AFL, which obviously now my generation can relate to a little bit more because we've seen GWS and Gold Coast. But what was that sort of period like for you?
It was quite different. That was the first year of the national draft combine, so the training thing. And we did it it was out at Waverley, and so that was in 94. So it's showing my age right now, but that was the first year. It actually was the inaugural year of that training camp, and I was rooming with Jason Ackermanis, and so there was a period of time where you do the beep test, you do all the the jump tests, you do the sprint test, all that sort of stuff, and then there's a period of time where it's about an hour where I don't know if they do it now, but you would have to sit like in the table, sit in a lunchroom area or whatever, and you'd sit down and talk to all the AFL coaches, AFL draft, all the recruits, all that sort of stuff. Jason Ackermanis and myself sat there by ourselves. No one came near us. Really? Little did I know, he was already scheduled for Brisbane Lions, and I knew, not that everyone else knew, but I already knew that I pretty much committed to Fremantle. And this is literally 4 weeks before the draft, but 8 weeks before the draft, I'd already committed. So we both sat there just twiddling our thumbs. I remember Kevin Sheeny walked over and goes, you guys are untouchables because you're already locked away. I'm like, so it was quite weird. And then, just to go on, just that journey of keeping it quiet, knowing where I was going, sit there and be all surprised. And it's almost like just keeping it a surprise from everyone. But, it was great. It was, I look at it as that was the number 1 draft pick for them. It wasn't even though I was number 1 draft pick Australia-wide, but it was a draft pick for them, for Fremantle itself. So, it was a great occasion and something that, people still talk about it today. So it wasn't number 2 or number 3, it was number 1. So cool.
It's always going to be in the folklore, in the memory. But what was it like the early days? Obviously, a brand new club. It wasn't, you weren't walking into maybe, a Melbourne or a Collingwood or a Hawthorn that's been established and got a huge history. What was that sort of, an interesting period as well? Because you probably wouldn't have known better either, being your first AFL club.
No, I didn't know any better, and I wasn't any wiser. Well, I guess my focus was trying to earn the respect of the players. That was the main thing for me. Even though I was number 1 draft pick, I needed to still prove myself. And even when I played for East Perth Royals, it was still that, trying to earn their respect and trying to gain that credibility as a player. So, and it's all learning as well. I mean, I was skinny, 6'5", weighing 72 kilos, 73 kilos. Like I was a featherweight, so I needed to work on that sort of side of my stuff. And I always had the athleticism. So I just had to build the frame. I had to build that, around the frame. So Yeah, you're going through, there's, team unveiling, the new jumper, the new song. I mean, everything that comes with that. The new president, you're unveiling the coach, and then there's the new assistant coach. Like, everything was new. Everything. New shoes, like new sponsors. Felt like we were going to function every single week, announce this, announce that, announce this, announce that. So it was pretty hectic in the first year, or in the first pre-season, I guess, with all those announcements. But once we got playing, it was good fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. And for you and everyone listening, and obviously myself, actually, funnily enough, I told my old man, he asked me, who you've got coming up on the podcast? I said, Jeff White. I said, you remember Jeff White? He goes, Jeff White. He goes, he was the first of the mould of ruckman that was like the athletic brand that the ruckman is. So he gave you these massive props. So you obviously left a mark on some people, which was, I thought, quite a big compliment, because obviously people relate that to like Dean Cox and so forth. But what for you prompted the move to come to Melbourne? And I guess originally you're from here, so to come home.
Well, my last year of Freo was 97. I suffered a pretty severe injury. It was like round 3 or 4 against Essendon over there. I lacerated my spleen. But I gave the club all indications that I wanted to re-sign and wanted to stay on. So we put some pieces in place about getting my parents over and my 2 brothers to come over and do some schooling. But I just felt that during that period of time when I was injured, there wasn't any communication from the club. I think they were very lackluster in the fact that they thought I was just going to re-sign. So there was no sort of service to my family. So I started getting a lot of calls from a lot of clubs from Melbourne, and they started presenting their, I guess their team ethos and the history of their clubs and the players. And I started having other players ring me. I don't think you can do that now, but yeah, I just felt like, they were adding more ruckmen. They had, I think at that stage they had, 6 or 7 ruckmen on the list. Mm. So there was obviously a lot of offers coming from all the clubs in Melbourne. And yeah, just got to the stage where I just really went with my instincts and felt that it was time to go home. And I really wanted to play on the MCG. I really wanted to play in front of big crowds. And I always sort of dreamt of that as a kid. So what better club to go to than Melbourne, playing every second week at the MCG. It came down to Richmond, Collingwood and Melbourne. But as I've spoken about this in my podcast, and I think it resonates with me even more now, is that back then, not that I knew that, but I was just going with my instincts, just going with my gut feelings. And everything with Melbourne just flowed. I had Neil Danaher, who was my assistant coach at Freo. He became the head coach. My junior coach for the Dandenong Stingrays, he became the assistant coach at Melbourne. Just everything was flowing. Everything was falling into place, whereas I found a few different things that I wasn't agreeing with the other clubs. So even though Melbourne only won 4 games in 97, we ended up making a prelim in 98. It was irrelevant. I wanted to go somewhere that I was comfortable, somewhere that was good for me, somewhere that I thought that I could really excel my skills and, my want as a player. And no better person was to have as a mentor as Jim Steins. So really everything just fell into place.
That's pretty awesome and amazing to hear. And for those listening, and we will go into it in a bit more depth, is the Finding Self-Love with Jeff White podcast. It's relatively new, but I mean, you've pumped out a lot of episodes. I've been listening to them, and they are really, really insightful. But just to translate some of the stuff and the content you're putting out today, like how much of that reflectiveness and how much focus did you have on self through your AFL days? Like was that sort of profound to you at all? Or did that sort of come later on in life?
No, it's definitely that sort of stuff, which I absolutely so passionate about. It's definitely come over the last probably 10 months, I reckon. I went through a really bad stage last year, last half of last year, but it was a build-up of what had happened previously. And now when I look back at my career and look back at that, what I was just explaining about my decision to go to Melbourne, it was in me. It was there. It just had to be at a certain point to actually come out. I know that throughout my career, I used to find words to, motivate me. And so I'd search for a word on Google. I'd try and connect that with some sort of motivational quote. I'd print it out. I'd leave it in my sports bag. I'd leave it in my wallet, leave it in my car. It'd be something that it would be a daily reminder to actually read about it and read it through, memorize that quote, memorize that motivational quote, and actually get me lifted for the next game. Well, when I had this spiritual awakening in October last year, which is the most powerful thing I've ever experienced, I started getting words coming to me. So I started writing those words down. And at this point in time, I wasn't on social media. I was obviously just trying to find myself because I was going through, a lot of stress, a lot of there's a lot of cloudiness going on. And anyway, I started writing quotes, and all of a sudden I found that it was not only healing me, but I found like it was motivating me in some way as well. So when I came back on social media, I started writing those quotes, and I think to this day I've written over 400, and all those quotes, all those words come to me on a daily basis. It's quite, it's extremely powerful, which I just write. Once a word comes, I write it down, write a quote, and away I go. So
that's crazy, right? So
cool.
you don't actually, you're not, it's not to say that you're not thinking about what you're writing, but a lot of this is actually, you're not really putting your brain into it. It's more coming into you as a human being. And you're just
coming
to
me. Yeah.
That's great. So what was this spiritual awakening you speak of, that sort of?
It was just all to do with just signs. So I've always been someone who has, I've sort of believed in signs now and then. It goes back to when I made a decision with Melbourne. I felt that things were just flowing. You just know when things are flowing. You send an email or you're texting someone or this just falls into place and so on and so forth. You just get that feeling. Well, I got that feeling when I was deciding to go to Melbourne. It just felt like right. It felt like the right decision. Felt comfortable with it. Had a great gut feeling about it. So last year when I started focusing on myself, instead of worrying about, when a lot of people try and find this, self-identity when they go through a crisis, it's either through a trauma, it's either through relationship, it's either through losing someone. So, it happens in different ways. For me, it was a relationship. And, coming off 13-year marriage, my wife left me 4 years ago. And then it was off the back of having heart surgery, finding a hole in my heart, being sued, and then her leaving in the space of 5 months. I didn't really heal myself after all that sort of stuff. So when it came to actually falling in love again, and that particular girl, which I have a lot of respect for, and to this day I just say thanks for leaving me. But at the time it was so difficult. And I just felt like I had no self-esteem. I had nothing, no self-confidence. So then I started working on myself. And then when I started working on myself is where I started seeing all these signs. And so anyway, this particular day, I won't go into too much detail, but there was a particular sign that I'd been presented with, and it was very foreign to me. But it turned out that 3 hours later, that particular sign was on a car that parked right next to me. And I just burst out crying. It was just almost like all the stress had left my body. And then the most amazing thing after that was that all these words just started coming to me, and it was all about who I was, my self-identity. So it went to another level, and it's hard to explain and that sort of stuff. But I've written over 400 quotes now, and none of it's from Google. Just all words come, and I guess the rhyming part comes from the fact that I love giving my sons and their kids nicknames, and I've always been that person to give people nicknames. So that's where the rhyming part comes from. But I just love it. I love it. I pour it out, and that's and you need to. I mean, it's authentic, and that's what people connect with.
That gave me goosebumps. Listen to that, the sign on the car too. I'm like, well, yeah, because I actually I'm quite spiritual myself, so I believe in a lot of things like that. I think that's why a lot of your content resonated with me, because when I tend to go through difficult periods, I tend to, and it's probably, Matthew McConaughey said something very interesting. A lot of people, for instance, journal and write about what's going on in their life and the challenges when things are going wrong, but no one really writes when things are going well to identify why it's going well. And I probably fall into that category where I tend to go quite spiritual and reflective when I go through tough periods. But when I'm good, there's no self-work or, sort of motivation to, check how I'm doing or things that I'm doing well and stuff like that. But it's interesting because you had this obviously amazing AFL career. I think you're not too far off being a 300 gamer. You were an All-Australian and so forth. Did you find sort of coming out of that world and sort of being disassociated with AFL difficult at all, or were you kind of comfortable and ready for the next phase of life?
That's the other thing too. When you think about signs, the last year of my career, I was having dreams about wearing a suit and being in front of a computer. I really had no idea where that was coming from. And it was quite consistent, it was consistent with that sort of, those things that were unfolding. So little did I know that I started a digital agency 2 years later and had to be in front of a computer. Not that I wore a suit, but that was sort of a sign. So there was a lot of signs back then. But my transition was, I always had the mentality of, like Michael Jordan would say, is that once I stop enjoying the game is the day I walk away. And that's exactly how I felt. I felt like I'd given my all. I had a personal trainer in Melbourne. I had a personal trainer on the Gold Coast. I gave everything. I left no stone unturned. So when the decision was there to hang out the boots, I was very comfortable in the decision, and it's another feeling sort of thing. But I didn't know that. But now looking back, there were a lot of strong decisions were based around how I was feeling at the time, and listening to your intuition and all that sort of stuff. So I went on the path, and I've always been a solution-based type of person. So I worked at a radio station for 2 years, but up here on the Gold Coast. But the first week I started at the radio station, my wife at the time introduced me to Twitter. I'm like, what is Twitter? So then I started doing research about Twitter. And as it turned out, I started doing posting on Facebook pages, doing the content, creating the graphics, and engaging with the audiences for some of my paid on-air clients for free. So, and then they started coming to me and saying, no, we don't want to do radio ads, but we want to do Facebook. We're very intrigued about this. So that's where my digital agency, White Echo, started, and I still do that to this day. So, so the transition, I guess, for me is that if I wanted to be a coach, I would have stayed in Melbourne. If I wanted to be in media, I would have stayed in Melbourne. For me, I just wanted to move on and create my own legacy outside of footy.
Well, you're definitely paving the way for a legacy in regards to the podcast and what you do there. Can you give me, it's kind of looking and speaking to you now, and obviously looking from the outside, it's kind of a natural progression of what you're doing. But for you, what was the kind of click or the drive what prompted you to build the Finding Self-Love podcast?
I might say that.
You're right.
I think it was, during that period of time, I think it was pretty much through, I'm going to say July, August, September, around that period of time was where it was really challenging for me. I needed to try and find me, and when you want to try and search for your self-identity and have that feeling of, who am I? And you said it earlier, just trying to find my identity when I was young. You have to do it yourself. You have to try and go on that journey yourself. And so I needed to do that. And I think a lot of the ups and downs I went through footy, particularly more downs than ups, was what I needed to do. And so I did. I started actually trying to, and at that stage, I had no idea that I was trying to discover myself. I was just trying to get myself in a better rhythm, a better mindset. And to actually then start building on those foundations and start reading those signs, that's where it became really powerful. And I believe in all that sort of stuff, the intuition, being present mindset, you'll see those signs. You don't catch those sort of stuff. If your mind's not present, if you're thinking about the past or you're thinking about the future, which is the anxiety sort of stuff, you're not in tune to feeling those messages that are coming to you. So you're dwelling on things you can't control. So that's what I started to do. I started to flush out and say, hang on a minute, I can't control this particular lady who's left me. I can't control that she's seeing someone, even though it was so soon. So there was a lot of those sorts of things. I just had to go, you know what, I'm just shutting that out. And I had there was one particular night where I was sitting there and I was on Facebook, and lo and behold, like her photo came up with a friend of mine, and it just gutted me. And so anyway, I woke up the next morning and my dog wanted to go to the toilet, and there was a message. I just felt like I just got to get off social media. If I can't control what's posted on there, I can control removing it. So I didn't go on social media for eight weeks. I think I was off social media for. And that was part of the, just getting rid of stuff that I couldn't control, and made such a big difference in my life. And I think what a lot of people do is they still get stuck in the dwelling on the past. Or they have, so it creates, depression, creates that regrets. And then people also worry about what could happen in the future, and that creates anxiety. And one of the things that Michael Jordan used to say, and he was so brilliant at staying present, is, well, I think negative when it hasn't happened. And it's so frigging true. Why worry about something that hasn't happened yet? You got to stay present. So by me getting my mind in the present state, those universal messages started coming through. I started following it. I started going for bushwalks. I'd never been for a bushwalk in my life. Just all those sorts of things. I started trying things because these messages started coming through. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do with the podcast. And that came because people wanted me to do the podcast. I've written a workbook now. I just launched it this week. So people wanted me to do that. So I started this as basically to try and help others. And that's just come through with being authentic and showing my passion and basically teaching people, if I can do it, you can do it, So, and if it turns into a full-time job or monetize in some way, so be it. But it's always just been a passion of mine just to help people.
That's amazing. I think, what you talk about, the social media aspect there that you experience, my generation, that's like given. That's an everyday thing. And it's for people, whether it's relationships or careers or, anything. There's so many triggers and, on social media that kind of bring up traumas or emotions in people. And I don't think a lot of people really are fully aware of what that does to them in some regards. Do you have kind of some techniques for people? And you've kind of spoke of, I do want to get a little bit into the period where kind of it went a bit wishy-washy for you, but do you have any sort of like simple techniques for sort of people that, when there are triggers and things that are coming up for maybe unhealed wounds, to avoid or to get past?
Well, I think, I think the first and foremost is to actually identify it. A lot of people will see it and they go, and they'll move on. I mean, I guess the perfect example for me was that the space of August 2017 to May 2018, I suffered a stroke, found out had a hole in my heart, had heart surgery, was sued, paid off that previous investor. 2 days later, my wife left me.
Wow.
So, but every time that happened, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, by the way, but every time that trauma, that pain, that heartache or whatever happened, I just go, I'll be all right. I just move on. I'll be all right. It'll work out. I didn't actually heal from any of those. So when the real pain hit and the heartache hit last year, I was gone because I hadn't done the previous healing. So with negative triggers on social media or whatever it is, or it might be a restaurant, it might even be a song. You've got to first identify that and then realize that, hey, I can't control that, and then try to work out ways how you can minimize it. If you can control it, for instance, social media, then out of sight, out of mind. Don't follow them. If you want to block, that's fine. Out of sight, out of mind. My dad always used to say, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, don't leave something, visible in a car that a robber can break the window and get into. So that's part of your boundaries, right? You don't want to be in a position where, you can see that and becomes a negative trigger. Then another negative trigger happens and you're worried about the first one. And then you've got a second negative trigger. And then all of a sudden you've got 2, 3, 4, all builds up. And that's where you become really, your mindset just goes everywhere. So being present, understanding your boundaries, understanding what you like, understanding what ticks you off, and then just trying to work through that. And that's what I'm trying to preach and not preach, I guess, but trying to teach people, just trying to give them those simple techniques and tips on how to actually stay present, because it's so powerful. I mean, my mind's so present right now, learning about all this different things. I'm learning every day, but once I do have triggers. I mean, my ex-girlfriend, she lives in my street. I know, and she, so I still have to drive. I mean, the oval that I run on, I run every day, and that was one of the things, is actually getting to daily routines. There's a gym that looks over our oval. She's joined that gym. So in the past, I would go, oh my God, I can't believe she's there, blah, blah, blah. That would be a negative trigger. But for me now, I just run and, I guess, show off. I've got a different mindset.
Okay.
But there's those constant negative triggers that are always there because she lives in the same street. But being able to know that, hey, you've made your decision. You're going to regret it. So it's all those sorts of things. It's about changing your mindset that way, and it becomes very powerful.
It's crazy to hear that period of your life you speak of, because like people talk about like health, wealth, and relationships as like, pivotal pieces to happiness, and when they're all kind of streaming, there's a happy human being. For you, like all three kind of pillars in some regards kind of all fell down in a very short period of time, which for any human being would be incredibly tough. And obviously now in your position, And hindsight's a beautiful thing. You kind of probably in some regards, not thankful because you wouldn't want to wish it upon anyone, but it's definitely made it, a stronger Jeff White, for example. But through that really challenging period where it is cloudy and you don't really want to wait for wounds to heal, you kind of just want to get on with life and move forward. Like, how did you navigate through that and kind of keep sane? And obviously being a father of 3 as well, it would have been, I can imagine, would have been a pretty tough period.
Yeah, it was, particularly last year. It was, it was almost like, I remember it vividly. We're talking about marriage, we're talking about moving in together, and then 3 hours later, I'm out the door. It just happened so quickly. And it was like, asking why, and then, then it's a process of elimination and then trying to figure out and then trying to obviously, be a single father of 3 boys and trying to be positive around them. But when I look back at the end, the most pivotal thing for me was to actually get into daily routines. And why I say that is because my focus every morning when I woke up, when I was going through my bad patches, I was thinking to myself, okay, I want this to happen, or I want that to happen, or this is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. When I look back in, as you said, hindsight, I was forcing things to happen. Whereas when I decided I'm going to get up early, I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to have a coffee by myself, I'm going to listen to music, I'm going to write. All of a sudden, when I woke up, I knew that I had these things and these tasks to do. And it got to the stage where they weren't tasks, they become things I was so passionate about, I couldn't wait to do it. Then when I'm actually doing those sorts of things during the day, I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking about issues that have happened in the past. I'm not even thinking about what I'm doing for dinner. I'm so focused on doing those sorts of things, became so present for me. And I can't stress that. I mean, I probably repeat myself quite a bit when I'm on social media about having daily routines, but it just changed my mindset from dwelling on what has actually happened that I can't control anymore to actually focusing on me. And then when I started focusing on me, oh my God, my life just changed. And that's when all this sort of stuff started happening. And, and that was a pivotal moment for me. That was the most important thing. And when I look back, when I was playing footy, we had a schedule every day. Yeah. We had a routine every day.
Yeah.
We had an itinerary every day. So my mind was present most of the time during my footy career. Yeah, you go have some downs because you lose a game or you went poor performance or you had an injury. But three quarters of my footy career, 13, 14 years, I had an itinerary every day. So now I look back and go, I've got an itinerary now. And that's what I love. And that's what I say to people. Get yourself in a routine, start with 1 or 2 daily routines and then filter out. I've got like 5 or 6 now, which I love. I wake up every morning. I know that I'm doing it. And you know what? Everyone who's in my inner circle, in my surroundings, whether it's my friends, my girlfriend, all that sort of stuff, they know that and they support me. And you just have the sense of freedom. And I cannot express that and encourage that for people enough.
That's actually, yeah. I'm a big believer in that. It's something I actually struggle with because I'm not a morning person. Like if there was a saying, your day's won in the night, I would win every day. But it's usually the day's won in the morning, which is, it's a challenge for me to get up and go before like 8 a.m. And that's something I'm actually trying to work on because go ahead.
But the thing I say with that is that's you.
Yeah.
You don't have to, that's the thing. We always feel like I get up at 4:35 every morning, right? But I never used to be like that. But that's because I have 3 kids. And the sweet spot for being quiet is between 4:30 and 5:30 because the twins get up at 6, right?
Yeah.
So I needed to work on how it works for me. If you get up at 9 o'clock, if you think to yourself, this is what I keep saying to people, if you think to yourself, I shouldn't get up at 9 o'clock, that means you're comparing. No, you do it for you. And why do we have to go to work from 9 to 5, and maybe that's our requirement? That's fine, but we compare so much. Why? If you're comfortable getting up at 9 o'clock at night in the morning, that's you. Do you? That's where you feel comfortable, right? And that's where you got to have the courage. And that's what I keep saying to people is that have the courage to speak up. If there's a dwelling situation in your relationship, just open up. You never know. That person might have the same, your partner might be feeling the same way and you're sort of stuck and you sort of, you're going that side of the room and he's going that side of the room and all that sort of stuff. Just speak up, have the courage. But that's what I'm trying to say to people is that that's you. And if if people don't agree with it, then I guess they don't need to be in your circle of friends. This is where it's so important. So yeah, that's what I'm. So yeah, get up at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, well, thank you. Now I feel comfortable. Might even put that on snooze.
Yes, it makes you. If that makes you feel comfortable, it's like they used to give Dennis Rodman. He was the only one at the Chicago Bulls that had a 24-hour gym pass. Why? Because he wanted to go at 3 a.m. Okay, that's Dennis Rodman, and that's a bit of the Zen sort of stuff. But that's what Phil Jackson was so powerful at doing. I mean, the greatest NBA coach of all time. He knew each and every one of those individuals, what they liked and what they disliked, but he wanted them to more like to get the best out of them, right? So if you get up at 8 o'clock, get up at 8 o'clock.
Oh, that's music to my ears,
kids,
Jeff.
I don't know if you got kids now, but when you have kids, it'll get earlier and earlier.
Okay, I've got a puppy. She does get me up earlier. But just speaking on the daily routines, because as I said, I'm a big advocate for that. The days, and I don't exercise every day, but the days that I find I've exercised early in the morning, my day is so much more productive. My mindset's in like a healthier space for a longer period and so forth. For athletes, and we speak about this a little bit because we are sort of so driven to a schedule for so long that when you come out of sport, you kind of lose that structure. And I've found that's a very vulnerable period for a lot of people in sport, and even in people in like careers, changing jobs or getting used to a routine with a partner and not being with that partner anymore. It can be quite challenging in those vulnerable periods when you lose that structure or you lose that sort of purpose in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And you've got to be able to. That's where the self-talk and the self-motivation comes into play, which a lot of people find it's hard. I mean, I look back and go, I found that hard. I think the last thing I wanted to do after footy was have a structure. The first thing I want now is a structure, So I guess I needed to flush that out and go, for me to travel to, say, Adelaide, or me to travel to the Gold Coast, or me to travel at some point and not have an itinerary in my face was such a breath of fresh air. I remember we used to get to the airport, here's your itinerary, get on the bus when you get to the airport. Say you're going to Adelaide, you get another itinerary. Then you go to dinner, you got another itinerary. It just felt like those itineraries coming left, right and centre. So post-footy, that's the last thing I wanted to have happen. But certainly there is a transition period there. We need to find your feet and then try and work out what's suitable for you. And that's the key. If you find out what's suitable for you and not compare about what others are doing, find out what the sweet spot is for you. It's such a freedom of your mind is so much better. And then you just got to have the courage to then just focus on that.
There's one thing, and as I mentioned to the listeners, I've listened to, I think probably 5 or 6 of the podcasts you've done. And one of the ones I really enjoyed, and there's actually a quote from one of them, which is probably going to be a mantra for life. That's how powerful it is, which I want to touch on. And Ethan, I know we're going to clip it when we talk about it. But the first one was just around the reward system. And you kind of touched on it there, like finding moments for yourself and finding yourself and enjoying your life. And a lot of people in the modern day, particularly with social media, are consumed by work and time and effort and whatever it may be. But not everyone clicks their fingers and goes, hey, like, what do I actually love doing? Why don't I go take an hour or 2 out of my day and go do something that I love? Shoot hoops, play golf, go catch up with friends for coffee, go have a beer, like stuff like that. And that's something you do a whole podcast on this. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, well, I'm glad you brought that up because it is. I mean, we don't, I mean, I was at a period of time, this is at 2004, where I was playing, that was, personally my greatest achievements that year. I was All-Australian, I was best and fairest, all that sort of stuff was in the stateside and so on and so forth. But I put a reward system in place for myself. And when I was a kid, my dad used to actually set little goals. If you play well this week, you get a chocolate bar. Or if you play really well, I can take you to Macca's. So there's always those little incentive sort of stuff. But it was all driven by him. And that was all well and good. And it made me focus on the end result and get excited for that. And that's what I teach my kids to this day. But during this period of time, I wanted to try and reward myself. And so it was a little story that these guys were, riding around the streets on those big, long skateboards. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I could easily have gone down and purchased that. But I made the intuitive decision to say, right, if I play really good for these next 5 rounds, I'm going to go and actually buy that skateboard. So I went into the skate shop. I looked at the skateboard, had a feel for it. I could have bought it on the spot, but I said, right, I'm going to. It's almost like you manifest something. And I mean, Kevin Garnett said that when he's in Vale with the Celtics. He said, I manifested the fact that I wanted to have my number on the ceiling, right? And that's what it did for me. I went in there, had a look at it, went, right, I'm gonna get this on this Monday, but I've got to achieve a level of good to very good for the next 5 weeks. I ended up in those 5 weeks, 4 of those 5 games, self-performance was very good to excellent. So I never forget, it was such an adrenaline rush.
Wow.
We finished training on the Monday morning. I went straight to that skate shop, walked in, bought that skateboard. And because we lived quite close, I was living with David Neitz at the time. Oh, was it David Neitz? Or might have been a friend of mine, but I lived very close to the shops. So I can't tell you I still get chills thinking about it now, just riding that skateboard. And
that's unbelievable.
I didn't tell Neil. I didn't want Neil to know about riding a skateboard, but I'm not doing ollies or anything like that. I'm just cruising on it. But I went that Monday afternoon just cruising. And that was that self-fulfillment that I achieved something for me. No disrespect to my mum and dad, or no disrespect to anyone else giving me a reward. I achieved that. And this is that's what I said in the podcast, is that you've got to reward yourself. Even if it's a small token of gesture to yourself, you've got to actually then pat yourself on the back end. And it just gives you a lift, and it gives you an extra motivation to get the next one and then to get the next one. But it doesn't have to be a monetary sort of thing. It could be really, really small. It could be something very sentimental. And the other thing I say with that too, say you want to do, if you want to achieve something over a long period of time, say it's 8 weeks, don't change the reward, leave the reward as it is, because when you look back, you go, well, at that point in time, that's what I wanted. And now I leave it at that because this is what I've been able to achieve. So yeah, I find that very powerful. Something I still do this to this day.
So yeah, because your kind of remedy or self-time is like going to the golf course and or the chipping range and something, and just taking a couple of balls and kind of just having Jeff White time. But are you sort of saying, to your perspective on that is like, set yourself a bit of a target of what you want to get, like a small milestone, achieve it, and then go and do something like that, and you get that liberation from hard work, but also complementing it with self-time, I guess.
Yeah, and there's a balance there too, and it's about actually just doing something for you. I mean, we tend to, and I like the fact that you go and have me time. I call it me time. So every Thursday. So what is today? Thursday. I'll go for a run, and because I live on the golf course, but we have a hotel here. So I'll go for a run, and then I'll go over and stretch in the water and sit, by the pool and put my headphones in. And I don't do that obviously every day. I don't do that every Thursday, but it's something I really look forward to. So, and if I'm able to say I run most days, but say I'm doing whatever it is, it's like a sentimental, like a reward for me. It's a bit of me time. I think we just live in a world where everything comes to us, via mobile phone, computers, whatever it is, where we're working. We don't take the time for us. And so that's what I love to try and encourage people to do. I mean, I had a particular gentleman coming out, reach out to me on Instagram, and he said, "Oh, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with that. I know that you run. I've got a sore back, blah, 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 blah." I said to him, "Well, what is it you could do around the house? Do you want to do vacuuming?" He goes, "Oh, I've been trying to do these weights." I said, "Right. Obviously be mindful of your back." He goes, "I've got this stick I can use." I said, "Perfect." It was one of those ones where you pick up rubbish. So he could do it by standing up and not bending over. Anyway, he put his headphones in. He came back to me 2 hours later, and his dialogue and what he spoke to me 2 hours prior was completely different. He said, "Oh my God, I didn't think about, not once did I think about what I'd been through. I was in the present moment. I was focusing on these weeds. I had the music playing. I heard some great tunes come through, and I just feel alive." And I said, "Well, there you go. You had your me time. Didn't have to be physical, and it was just, I just love that stuff. That's the stuff that just, inspires me when I'm inspiring others."
It's amazing to hear. And I actually really love that podcast because it's something I don't do at all. And like just little sentimental things to myself. I'm like, I never really do anything for me. I just work. And then like everything I kind of do is for other people. So it's kind of, when I listened to that, I actually got quite a lot out of that. So thank you for that. But one of the things that I really want to talk about for me, because I would say I'm a patient guy, but when it comes to like negativity in my life or negative emotions, in my mind, I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like I feel it and it hurts and whatever, but like I just want to keep living and having fun and positivity around. And it's not always easy to do because I've obviously gone through my trials and tribulations with sport and personal life. And one of the things you said to me, and a lot of people say it, it's not you said to me, a lot of people have said to me, like, time heals all wounds. And yeah, it does, but like, you know, not everyone wants to have time. Everyone wants to just heal their wounds. And the thing that you said that I loved, and it's going to live with me for a long time, is that time heals all wounds, but time flies when you're having fun. And I've said that to a few people since I've listened to it, and everyone's just kind of stopped and paused and really thought about it and gone, and I think it's such a beautiful depiction of it. But yeah, can you explain to me like a little bit more about that?
Well, I got a really close mate of mine who lives in Chicago, of all places. He's an Aussie, but he's a professional golfer or a golf coach over in Chicago there. Anyway, he came back when this is the middle of 2018. He came back and he said, "Let's catch up for coffee." So we went and caught for coffee, and he said to me, "Mate, I know that right at this point in time you're not going to feel this, but only time will heal. Time will heal your wounds. You know, you've just split up. You've gone through this, all this trauma, all this heartache in such a short space of time." So when I decided to move to where I live now, and that was obviously the separation time, I thought about that message, and I also thought that a lot of people, I've heard previously that time flies when you have fun, and I thought, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do things for me. So I went and bought my golf buggy. Always wanted a golf buggy, so I went and bought a golf buggy. I hadn't been playing golf for 2 years because I've been sacrificing so much of me to try and save my marriage. I went straight to the golf course and paid my membership, and I was in. So I started doing things for me. And what I found is that, yes, time started to fly and I started to heal. But the most important part about it, and I've learned that only just recently, is that I wasn't thinking about the past. Now, you've got to heal from the past. You've got to flush it out, as I say. You've got to, obviously, if there's a loss of a loved one, cry, speak it out, flush it out, all that sort of stuff. But then there comes a point in time where you've got to start, obviously having fun and enjoying yourself and do things for you. And what happens is you catch yourself and you go, "Oh, I haven't even thought about that. Well, that hasn't crossed my mind." That's the sweet spot. That's the present sweet spot. And that's what I try and encourage everyone to do. So yes, time flies when you have fun. So do things for you. Don't be guided by other people. And people will come out to you and give you advice and all that sort of stuff, but that's their story. How many times have you heard someone come out and say, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing this podcast. I've tried this and it didn't work." Well, that didn't work for you. What about me?
Yeah, but see, my perspective on that is that we didn't meet until today, but without you knowing, there's two pivotal things that you've said that have really that are going to potentially change my life and my perspective on life. And when I started this as well, my view, and being like yourself, an athlete, and you're competitive, I was like, I want to have the number one sports podcast in the country. And I really wanted to, I was putting all this pressure on myself. I want to be huge. All the podcasts I listen to, they're massive. So that's all I know. That's all I can associate with. And then I listened to a guy called Tim Ferriss, and he's written a bunch of books. Yeah, he's great at what he does. And he said, for people starting podcasts, you really should minimize your expectations, and you should be so happy that if you get one or two listeners, and one of those listeners goes and grabs another listener because of what they got out of it, that is so profound and so massive. And then I just flipped my perspective on podcasting. So that's why when you say that makes me think, oh, actually, no, the impact you're potentially already having, and think of me, someone who didn't even know you. Imagine the people who know you or close to you picking up what you do on a day-to-day basis, which is why you should stick to the podcasting game.
Well, I'll do another one today, and I really love it. I think the funny thing about that too, the one I did yesterday was about daily reminders. So when I listen over it, and this is what gives me chills, is that I'll listen back over what the podcast that I've done, and then as I'm listening in, I'm going, "Oh, surely I said this. Oh yeah, I did. Oh, surely I said that. Oh yes, I did." It's almost like I get in the zone when I actually am doing my podcast, which is really, really what I love, and that shows you authenticity of what I'm doing. Podcasts is great. And I have such amazing, like the feedback I've been getting so far has been awesome. And I mean, even just hearing you saying that you love the, Reward Me podcast, I think it was called, that gives me chills, and I love that. And I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking from personal experience. So that's what I'm trying to get across. And I had a gentleman come out today, and he sent me a message on Instagram. He goes, "How do you know so much about the human experience? Because I just connect with all your words." And I said, well, if there's a word about saying self-taught, I'm self-taught because I've gone through all this. I haven't read any books. I haven't reached out and been a philosopher. I haven't done any of that. This is all from human experience. And so this is where it becomes very powerful. And this is where it becomes really meaningful for me, is because I'm helping that person, that individual. And the amount of people that come out and say certain things and stuff like that, I can pick immediately what is wrong, what they're struggling with and stuff like that. And that's what I get a kick out of too. I just love being able to there to support people and help them. And so all these sort of the quotes, my workbook that's just been launched, I've got a mentoring program that's about to launch. All these sorts of things are all touch points where I want to help people in some way. If I can help with 5-10%, that's what I'm trying to achieve. That's what I love. I love this.
Yeah, and to top that, I think one of the things, as I said, attracted me to what you do. And as I said, in those podcasts, you are completely, like 100% vulnerable. Like you can hear it's coming through your soul and your body, because you're speaking with such passion and such knowledge, like almost life experience knowledge, through the issues that you speak of, or the sort of solution thinking that you talk about. But one thing, I know I have a heavy sort of male following around the podcast, and I know there's a lot of guys out there that go through a lot of stuff, and there is this stigma around males and being vulnerable and speaking about issues and challenges. And it's not to say that females don't go through the same stuff, but I feel females are a bit more comfortable being vulnerable, and it's not to say all of them are, and definitely some males are comfortable speaking their problems and issues. But what would be your advice to some of those sort of masculine figures that really struggle to open up and try and sort of hold everything and move forward through life and truck through?
Well, it's I guess from just touching on that, yes, the females are more open. I find that they're the ones that comment openly on my posts. I have so many males come out to me privately and talk, and I love the fact that they reach out, and that's what I love. And I think that's the initial step, is to actually reach out to someone that you can trust and just be open about it and speak about it. I think the thing is that if you don't, you hold it in and you don't really get it off your chest, and that can really put you way back. I mean, that's what I did. I wasn't healing myself. I was keeping it in, even when I was speaking to people, knowing that I was going through these issues. I don't want to get them down, but there was certainly times where I was with a really close friend, and he could sense that I was down, but I wasn't in the position to open up about it. Not in an open forum, but I should have privately just reached out and said, "Hey, mate, want to catch up for a drink? Let's talk it through." But I think in society we're open and we express ourselves more about it these days, and the education, which is so important, because it is. I was hearing the other day that between the ages of 40 and 60, there's suicide rates and stuff like that. It's just extraordinary. And I know that it's been a lot of challenges with COVID and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of it also starts with that individual having the courage to actually speak out. And, and it's amazing what it does when you actually speak out, get off your chest and speak it to others, because they might have a different perspective and a different view, but at least they're listening, and at least you're getting off your chest.
I couldn't agree more. Before we touch on just your book, before we sort of round up, one thing as well that I wanted to talk about, and you've used the terminology in this podcast a little bit, but just coming back to that sort of stigma around males or just people speaking up around their problems, one thing you spoke about in one of your podcasts was the can controls and the can't controls, and really understanding and separating the two, so that you kind of, know where to hold emotion and know where to kind of allow, what you can't control to kind of just fizzle through. Can you touch on that in a bit of detail? Because I found that actually really interesting, and I wasn't really, it's not something that I really kind of look at in depth in my own life, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's a part of the workbook, and I think it's in step 2. It's about actually writing down everything that's going on in your life would be rendered as a negative or as negative and/or some sort of touch point that's not positive. So the process of doing that, and this is what I went through myself. I just went, you know what, I'm going to write down all the things that are in my life at the moment that are a trigger point for me. And the list was quite long at that time. But then I actually went beside it and put 2 more columns as can and can't. And then you go through that process and go, right, okay, can I control this? Yes, I can. All right, what are the processes I need to put in place to actually minimize this issue? So it might be a bill. It might be an overhanging bill. There might be someone who's chasing you for money, whatever. Just have the courage to reach out and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Is there any chance we can go on a payment plan? Can we do this? Can we do that? Put your mind at ease. All of a sudden you're having that open dialogue. You're being completely transparent, and it's amazing what that level of weight is removed from your mindset. Then you look at the things you can't control, and one of the things with me was like I can't control this particular lady who's left me. I can't control her emotions. I can't control what she does. Okay, I'm just going to let that go. I'm going to put a line straight through it. I can't control the fact that she's seeing someone. I'm going to put a line through that. I can't control that, she's going to post all this on social media. Okay, I'm going to unfollow her. So all of a sudden I'm starting to eliminate things I can't control. And it's amazing what that freedom that gives you. So my process with that and my teachings is to focus on the things you can control and minimize that noise, right? And then eliminate the things you can't control. But it's on a consistent basis. So it's about actually catching yourself thinking about dwelling on things you can't control. You go, I can't control that. Okay, now I'll move on. And that's where the daily routines come into place, because then you go, okay, what do I need to focus on right now? Okay, I've thought about that. I can't control. Okay, what do I need to focus on right now? So it's that mindset of trying to keep yourself present. And that's the key. Because you know what it's like, it's funny, and I bring it up, I've mentioned this a few times in the podcast, but, you might be in the toilet, you might be in the car by yourself, you might be in the shower. Those quiet times are the time you're about to put your head to the pillow. Those are the times when you are vulnerable.
Correct.
So if you can try and minimize the times that you actually think about these things during the day by keeping yourself active mentally and physically, when you get to that stage, you don't dwell on it too much, because you basically, your mind is exhausted from thinking about things that you're focusing on for that day. So that's what I'm trying to get to people to think about. And that's why running and music for me has been the best meditation, because when I finish my run, I am exhausted, but my mind feels like it's at peace. But there also is a period of time when I'm running where a motivation kicks in. And I used to have that a lot when I was in footy, second and third quarter, like, okay, I've got to dig deep here. And I have that when I run. And then when I'm finished, my mind's at peace. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking about the future, and I'm very present. So it becomes it's almost spiritual, but it's it's a meditation for me.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's what I'm saying to people. Find a sweet spot. If you want to walk, if you want to, that sort of stuff, get your mind active.
That's funny. I get the exact same thing when I run, from music and running. That I start having these like quotes come into my mind, or these like videos of like motivation of working out, and all of a sudden I'm like a different human when I take the headphones out and I stop running, which is why I'm a big advocate for exercise. But also, one of the tips on that, if you are exercising, and I recommend this highly, when you start your exercise, have the volume at half, right? Have the music at half volume. When a song, and then you start your exercise, when a song comes up that you love, that gives you a bit of adrenaline rush, turn it up full ball and watch what happens to your mind. It's crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone put this to the test and then get in the comments, because we are going to trial and error this. That is awesome. Oh, I'm going to put Eye the Tiger on and just go full blast.
Yeah. Well, what I do is I have my own playlist, or whether it's songs I've liked or my own playlist. So when I do my warm up, which is about 300 meters around this oval, I have it at half full. And then I'm always doing 2Ks a day. So whether it's 10 200s or whatever it is. But then there would be a particular time when a song comes on and I love, and I turn it up full ball, and then my mind just goes, all positive in a, really motivational, positive way.
Well, honestly, Jeff, this conversation, I knew it would be invigorating and absolute fun, and I've actually learnt a lot from listening to your podcast. So I do want to endorse that to all my listeners. Everyone that's subscribed to the Unlaced podcast, please get on to the Self-Love podcast with Jeff White. You can follow Jeff. Obviously, you'll see all the tags from the marketing content on Instagram and TikTok. We'll tag him in all of it, but it's at Jeff White 34. One of the great AFL players for the Demons, but as you can see, one of the also masculine figures coming out of sport that's happy to be vulnerable and help people. And Jeff, I do want to follow up on that request, and I'll talk more about this closer to the time, and we'll get the listeners involved. But definitely, whether I'm in the Gold Coast or you're in Melbourne, doing that YouTube vlog where we kind of hand out some of those affirmations to people and capture some cool content, because I think
perfect. Yeah, I'd love to.
That would be awesome fun.
Yeah. Well, actually, as I spoke to you, I had it set up with one of my boys. We had this person lined up. We were about to do it, and he got up and walked away. I'm like, damn it! It was the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, no,
he's like, we had it built up. But there's a guy also too. I just started following just recently. He does haircuts for free as well.
Oh, I've seen that actually in the States.
Yeah. He's got 1.4 million followers, and he'll go up and get a haircut and tells the stories. And it's amazing how, it's like Humans of New York, when they tell those stories about who that person is. It's a similar sort of stuff. And there wouldn't be a hairdresser in the world that doesn't talk. So, they're going to unearth something. So it's pretty cool.
Well, Jeff, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on the show. As I said, such an insightful chat. And mate, we'll look forward to linking up and doing this vlog in the future.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me on. And shout out to all your listeners, and hope they got a little bit out of it today.
Awesome.